Francisco Suarez was a Spanish Jesuit born in Granada, in Andalusia, in 1548, died in Lisbon, in Portugal, 1617. Suarez, I would say, is commonly considered to be sort of icon of the period, of the cultural, ideological period called Second Scholasticism. He studied at the famous university in Salamanca, University of Salamanca, in late 60s, from 1566 up to 1570. He taught after that in many Spanish universities, not only in Salamanca, but in Valladolid, in Avila, in Segovia. He started to teach at Segovia philosophy. And last 20 years of his life, he taught and worked, was writing in Coimbra, Portugal, in Coimbra. So he moved here 20 years ago before his death. Why is this important? I would say he's important because he sort of channeled. He became the channel conduit of scholastic thought in general to early modern philosophy, early modern thought in general. You know? So his writings, various writings, are sort of encyclopedia of scholastic thought in general. So he is very detailed, systematical in his elaborations of various opinions of this long Aristotelian scholastic period. And he is also important for his, let's say, approach. He always tries to find via media, let's say, the middle way between two extremes, you know. So if we want to understand the beginning, the origin of early modern philosophy, I think we need to know Suarez philosophy. So Descartes did not start from the scratch, but his philosophy is full of assumptions, and those assumptions can be followed in Suarez philosophy. And Suarez became important not only for the Catholic world, but also for the Protestant world. So his Disputationes Metaphysicae, metaphysical disputations, were published even in Calvinist Geneva. So his influence was really broad and deep, even though early modern so-called textbook philosophers do not quote him so often and explicitly, but if one, let's say, delve into their texts, one can detect his influence and the reflections of his thought. So this historical reason, historically speaking, is the reason why Suarez is very important author in the history of philosophy. So if you look at the program of our conference in Porto, you can get the clear impressions that the most of papers are devoted to practical, let's say, political philosophy, you know, ethics, political philosophy, and philosophy of law. So I would say that nowadays the contemporary research is devoted at most to the practical field of Suarez philosophy. And the applications are clear, you know. Let's take, for instance, example of just war. Just war, you know, unfortunately we have many wars nowadays in the world, and you always have to, let's say, solve ethical dilemmas about wars. When and under which conditions to start a war, to raise a war against an enemy. You need to solve dilemmas connected with the process of war, within a war. And of course, you need to solve issues, ethical issues connected with the situations after war, you know. So, for instance, issue what to do with the property of enemy, you know, in an enemy territory. You know, if you are a victor, if you win a war, so do you have the right, the complete right to property in enemy territory? One of those questions which were which were elaborated by Suarez. So, yeah, just poor is one of the strong, visible issues in contemporary Suarezian research, so to say. Another practical issue is issue of law, philosophy of law in general. Suarez published in Coimbra in 1611 his encyclopedia of philosophy of law called On the Laws and the God, the Lawgiver. And so Suarez goes through various kinds of laws. One of them, important law, is natural law. So we have very detailed investigations into the topic of natural law. Suarez, as I said, let's say, steers the middle ground between two extremes. And it's the case also in his conceptions of natural law. It means that he takes something from so-called intellectualism, according to which things created are, let's say, their natures are intrinsically good, and we can judge our behavior according to the things themselves, and between the voluntarism, which says that things are good or bad because God wills them to be in this way. So this is sort of balance between these two demands, between these two extremes positions, and Suarez again tries to find, let's say, the middle position, which would avoid extremes. So which I find really interesting and important. It's a sort of Aristotelian prudence. Prudence is in the middle positions, just to avoid extremes. Speaking about the theoretical philosophy, of course, it's more difficult to find, the relevance, updated relevance in the context of contemporary philosophy. But one can find it. I think one can find such a relevance in the issue of philosophy of mind. If you look at Suarez' De Anima commentary, there are many interesting arguments and, let's say, stances connected with the issue of intentionality and consciousness. So intentionality as the essential feature of our cognition, of our cognitive acts, which are about something, and consciousness as the, again, let's say, evident phenomenologic experience we live through at every moment. And Suarez again steers the middle ground, that he takes into considerations, the first-person perspective of phenomenology, which everyone has. But on the other hand, he also takes into account third-person perspective, let's say scientific perspective, in his analysis of cognition. So again, I would say that he, let's say, solves the issues which are contemporary, which are important for contemporary analytical philosophy of mind, and he offers solutions which can be, let's say, competitive in the context of other solutions in the contemporary philosophy of mind. So, except apart from practical philosophy, also theoretical philosophy is the place where we can find Suarez as a relevant philosopher, for our times.